All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar regarding physical inventory in AIM-SI using the LDX10 mobile computer handheld data collector. There's a whole lot of people here today. I'm seeing about half of our attendees are here so far of the registered number. So I'm just going to give a few quick shout outs. There's too many to list everyone here. I would love to give everyone a shout out, but unfortunately there's just so many here today and the turnout's been absolutely wonderful. But I will give a few shout outs to Christy Turner and Kelly Huff and Mark Payne and Mike Craig and Stephanie Howe and Zora and Jeremy Hebling and just everyone that I've had conversations with in the past here. It's wonderful to see you here today in attendance, and I hope everyone's going to get a whole lot of information out of today's webinar. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you see here, we're basically going to be reviewing the AIM-SI physical inventory process, really with a focus on using this handheld data collector. This is the LDX10 mobile computer. It is running technically a little copy of Windows Mobile, and as we can see here, it's got a little suite on it loaded called the DC suite. Basically, it's got a full complement of different tasks that it can perform to help you out with your AIM-SI experience. Really, of course, today we're going to be focusing on the physical inventory aspect. I apologize if it doesn't quite get in focus here. Hopefully, you'll be able to at least kind of catch the concept of it. So that you can, when you do receive your own, you'll be able to have a good understanding and you'll have at least seen kind of how the process goes here. Um, so with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at a few elements here. We're going to first of all go through just a little bit of an overview of today's webinar here. So, as we can see here, we're going to have a quick overview of the physical inventory procedure. Then we'll dive really right into the initial setup of the data computer, the data collector for your specific computer. Really, we're going to be focusing on how it works just from my own personal perspective. I'm currently running a Windows 10 based computer, so that you can see those elements here, and we're going to try and do as much as possible there in that regard. Um, Hopefully that, can anyone hear me now? I saw a question saying that someone couldn't hear me, and just did a quick switch here. Um, is that making any difference? Okay. So let me just go ahead and quick restart here. I apologize for that. New software, just getting used to it. And, you know, one little quick mention sometimes can follow it up. So anyway, let me go ahead and get started again here. So once again, welcome to today's webinar featuring the physical inventory process using the LDX10 mobile computer. My name is Bill Steppen. Sometimes I'm referred to as Professor TriTech. But you know, your mileage may vary in that regard. Anyway, let's go ahead and I'll give you a real quick overview once again. So once again, we're going to be focusing really on the physical inventory process using this LDX10 data computer. If you have attended these physical inventory webinars in the past, we're going to be covering at least a little bit of the same type of detail. Of course, we're really going to be focusing on using this computer as opposed to using just the normal handheld or manual data process of doing the physical inventory process. That being said, we are going to go through the process start to finish here. So let's go ahead and actually once again take a quick look at what we're going to be covering here. So we're going to be going over a quick overview, as I mentioned, of the physical inventory procedure. We're also going to then dive into how this computer gets set up on your computer, this data collector. Again, I'm going to be focusing on a Windows 10 element. Really with Windows 10 or probably even Windows 7 and up, really it should be fairly plug and play. We're going to take a look at a few supplemental programs that you'll want to make sure you have on your computer so that the system and the process goes smoothly for you. And we're going to take a look at that. Two programs called Windows Mobile Device and then also DC Sync. From there, we're going to dive into the physical inventory process. We're going to take a look at how we prepare for a physical inventory, and then we'll scan a few sample products using our data collector. We'll then import those into AMSI. We'll take a look at a few reports, and then we'll see how to finalize that process, how we can handle specifically serialized inventory. Unfortunately, I don't have any grand pianos or high-tech pieces of inventory here in the room. There are a number of folks here that are attending from all different industries, and so we have some folks here from the music industry, from the sporting goods industry, from the bicycle and fitness industry, from the hobby industry, all different walks of life and all different aspects of retail. For our demonstration model here, we're going to be making use of some musical care products. So don't focus too much on the individual products themselves. Really focus more on how the process works. So just bear that in mind. From there, we'll wrap up and we'll talk a little bit about what actually is going on in the background, because it's important to me for you folks to realize really what's going on from a data analysis perspective in how physical inventory is actually affecting your inventory counts. And so we'll take a look at hopefully a simple breakdown of that, and then we'll wrap up. So initial setup of the LDX 10. So really, when you get this out of the box, you get a box like this. Just go ahead and take the device and plug it via the USB cable. There will be a provided USB cable. Just plug that into your computer and you should see a program start up called, or it should actually install a program called Windows Mobile Device Center. And I'm going to bring that up on screen right now just so you can kind of see what that looks like. And so as we can see here, it's basically just a clean screen here for Windows Mobile. Pay attention to down here in the corner where it says connected. That's what you want to focus on. You want to make sure that when you have this device plugged into your computer, you want to make sure that it says connected down there in the corner. If it doesn't say connected, then you may need to do some troubleshooting. Obviously, if you're purchasing this from our sales staff here at TriTech, you can always call with questions of a technical nature to get technical support on this device. So don't hesitate to give our fine folks in support a call if you have any issues with that. But you want to make sure it says connected down there, and you want to make sure that this program gets installed. If it doesn't get installed, there is a link available for download on our website. I'm going to switch over to our website. So when you go to our website, www.technology4retailers.com, the 4 is a number 4. So here's our main screen here on our website. And you're going to want to go down to the very bottom. You'll see a section called About Us in the lower left-hand corner. Let me just go ahead and highlight this. So you'll see About Us down here. My lovely scribble process here. And in particular, you want to focus down here at the very bottom where it says Hardware Setup. That is what you want to click on. And when you do click on that, that will take you to our hardware setup page. And at least as of today, November 24th, 2015, the LDX10 data collector should be the second listing from the top here, and there will be a setup instruction link here called the LDX10 data collection PDF. When you click on that, if you're using an integrated processor or browser, it should basically open up this PDF right here in your browser window. If you can always right-click, and there should be an option. I'll just back up really quick here and right-click, and there should be an option that says save or save file or save link or something along those lines. It doesn't look like that's coming up on screen here for you, but depending on your browser, you should see something along those lines. And then you can also always just right-click and save as while you're on this screen as well. But I want to bring this screen up so you can see just an overview of this of basically how this device works within AIM-SI. And if I scroll down a little bit here, you'll see a section for Section 3, uploading data to AIM-SI, and there's two links here. There's a link to the DC Sync utility, and there's also a link to the mobile device download. So again, when you plug this in for the first time, assuming you're on, I believe, Windows 7 or higher, it should automatically install Windows Mobile Device Center and synchronize this to your computer. If not, try clicking on this link and see if that makes a difference for you. Once you have Windows Mobile installed, go ahead and download this DC Suite, this DC Sync utility. Go ahead and install that. And when you install that, it's going to bring up a program that looks like this. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over. So as we can see here, it's going to bring up a program called DC Sync. You'll see the AML branding in the upper left-hand corner. And when you first come in here, there's not going to be a whole lot on screen. But what you also want to focus on in here is in the upper right-hand corner now, you'll see a little cursor or a little icon that should say connected. And I'll just bring a little highlight up here on that, up here in the corner there. So again, you want to make sure that it says connected in the Windows mobile device. You also want to make sure it says connected here in the DC Sync utility. And we're going to come back to this utility after we've scanned a few items and can now see how this process goes start to finish. All right. So with that all being said now, let's go ahead and take a look at the preparation process here within AIM-SI itself. We're actually doing pretty good on time here. So let me go ahead and switch over to AIM-SI. Okay, so everyone should be fairly familiar with AIM-SI at this point, hopefully. If not, then this is, of course, the main screen of AIM-SI. You've got all of your menu options up here at the top. And for our purposes today, we're going to be focusing on the physical inventory menu underneath the modules inventory menu. Essentially, the process is you're going to do what's called a preparation for physical. That's that very first item right there on the top of the menu. After that, you want to make sure, it's very important that when you do this preparation for physical inventory, that there are no changes at that time to your inventory levels while you're performing the inventory count. In other words, no selling of inventory, no receiving of inventory, no transferring inventory out or store to store, no adjustments to your actual inventory levels whatsoever. The key is when we take this preparation, what we're in effect doing is we're taking a snapshot of your inventory levels at that exact moment in time so that AIM-SI can do a comparison of the computer quantity that it registered at the time that you prepared for physical and the computer quantity, or excuse me, rather the counted quantity that you are keying into it. And you can either key it in manually, but of course today's session is on the data collector. So we're going to be focusing on using the data collector to go around, capture inventory, and also import that into AMSI, do whatever we need to do to see what the discrepancies are, what the changes are going to be to our inventory levels, and then ultimately finalize that count by doing an update non-serialized quantities. And we'll talk about both non-serialized quantities and serialized quantity processes here using this data collector. It's actually pretty slick. And then we'll, like I said, we'll wrap up with how this is actually affecting your data in the back end. So when we're getting started, we're going to go to that prepare for physical process. And I'm going to make this screen bigger, hopefully, so that everyone can see it a little bit easier. When you come into prepare for physical, you'll get a screen that looks like this. It's going to have today's date up at the top. It's going to ask you the location that you are taking your physical inventory at. Now, if you just have one location, it'll just be displaying that main location that you're at based on your workstation record. I happen to have a couple of store locations here in this particular demo database. For our purposes today, I'm going to focus on doing physical inventory at our Dubuque location. If you would like, you can also narrow it down to a specific locator. I'm not going to do that. For our purposes today, I am going to focus on Roche Thomas products. I happen to have a handful of Roche Thomas products. If you are in the music industry, you probably know what I'm holding right there. I'm also going to narrow this down to band and orchestra accessories, just so that I can focus on the specific products that I have here. And then more than likely, all the Roche Thomas products already are in band and orchestra accessories, so that might be a moot point. Now, what will happen is when I hit proceed on this, it's going to take a snapshot of just that inventory. I see some questions if we can do a partial inventory, and basically what we just did is really doing a partial inventory. It's doing just that selected inventory based on the manufacturer, based on the category and subcategory. So I definitely recommend, if this is your first time doing a physical inventory in AMSI, narrowing it down to just a very small fraction of your actual inventory. And in fact, if you can, when you're first doing this for the very first time, doing it for a category or a subcategory or even a particular product line that is very, very low in actual numbers, just so that you can see this whole process start to finish and perform it for yourself. Obviously, we're going to be doing that here on screen today, so that you can see that in action. If you are at the spot now where you're comfortable with doing physical inventory, and it's now the time of year when you're going to do that full-scale inventory, you're going to shut the store down and just have everyone going around and counting inventory until they're blue in the face, by all means, you can, on that same physical inventory screen, that prepare for physical inventory, leave all of those filters blank or as all, and then it's going to take a snapshot of your entire physical inventory. Okay. So we've prepared for physical inventory, and by the way, one really quick pointer. If I hop back into that same program here, prepare for physical, if you are either already doing a physical inventory or if you've done one in the past, you'll more than likely get a screen that looks like this that says there is a physical inventory already in progress that started on XYZ date. Obviously, I just performed this today, so it's coming up and saying that this is as of 11/24. Please choose one of the following. You can say I'm starting a new physical, remove existing records, exit the program and don't change anything, or I want to add more records to the current cycle count. If you had done a physical inventory 6 months ago, you'll probably get this screen. You would just say that you're starting a new physical. If you are doing your physical inventory on a category by category process and you're wanting to add those categories as you go getting around to counting them, you would say you want to add more records. For our purposes today, I'm just going to exit the program. Okay, so we've done a preparation of physical inventory. Like I said, it's taken a snapshot of that specific inventory, just so you can kind of see what has been included in this inventory snapshot. I'm going to run a report. You don't have to do this, but this is an optional thing that you can do if you'd like to see what AMSI is expecting you to count, we're going to go into the inventory catalog, the report catalog on the inventory tab, and I'm going to go down to our physical inventory reports. There are 4 physical inventory reports that you might want to pay attention to or be cognizant of, be aware of. There's the list physical inventory counted but not in inventory. Likewise, there is a list physical inventory not counted. Basically, the idea for physical inventory counted but not in inventory is you have scanned something with your data collector that doesn't exist as a SKU in inventory. Or as a caveat to that, you might have scanned something that is in your inventory but didn't get prepared, didn't get included in the preparation process. Maybe you scanned something for a category that you didn't prepare for. Like I prepared for band and orchestra accessories, and now I go and I scan something that's in the percussion department. Or for you folks in other industries, let's say if you're in the firearms and sporting goods industry and you're counting your handguns, so you prepare for handguns and then you accidentally scan something in the ammo department. I mean, whatever the case may be, those items would show up on this report as well. The other element, the flip side of that, is physical inventory not counted, where it was prepared, but it didn't get included in the counting process, either using the data collector or manually. Again, focusing on the data collector today. The report that I want to bring attention to right now is this list physical inventory for manual count. But Bill, you say that's for physical inventory for manual count. I know, but this can be a handy report so you can just kind of see what inventory is going to be included in this this prepared snapshot. Now, you'll see that it's going to come up and it's going to give you some options for selecting category and subcategory, and it's giving you that entirety of your inventory, but it's looking at the snapshot file. It's not looking at your actual physical, what I'm going to call live quantity file. It's looking at the snapshot. So if I leave this blank, I'm only going to see on screen what's included in my physical snapshot file. So I'm just going to leave this as is. I'm going to throw this up on screen. And here we see the physical inventory listing, just the Roche Thomas items that are in that specific inventory category. I've got several in different types of subcategories here, but these are the 7 items that it is expecting me to count throughout this process. Now, I only have a handful of them here. I'm not going to count all of them, even though there's only 7. So don't worry about that. Also, I see a question saying, will there be a recording of this webinar? Yes, this webinar is being recorded, the face cam as well. So I'm going to be stitching that together at the end of this session and making that available for download as soon as it is ready to go. But anyway, getting back to the process here. So if you just want to see what it's going to be expecting you to count, run this report. Don't be fooled by the manual count element of it. You can run this even if you're going to be using the data collectors. But it's really not necessary if you're going to be using the data collector, because this, as you can see over here on the right-hand side, has a little spot where you can actually write down your physical counts. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to be scanning the products. So now we're at a point where we are now ready to go around and scan products. So let's take a look at our device. If you are at a blank screen like this, you can just tap the screen if you currently have it on, and that'll wake it up. If you have it in sleep mode, you can press this little power button, just hold that down, and that will bring the screen and the whole device out of sleep mode or out of hibernation. We're going to take a look at the physical inventory menu option here. Again, I'm sorry if that is a little out of focus. We're just going to tap on that, and that brings up a screen where you can select a data file. This is going to be the data file that we're going to be populating with our scanned barcodes and SKUs and the quantities. And it's going to, when you're first getting started, there's going to just be one little option that says create new data file. And you have along the bottom, delete, home, and open. I'm going to say open. And it's going to ask us for a name, and it's going to give us a basic name here. It's just going to call it physical inventory _1. I'm just going to leave that as is. You can always rename it if you want. There is the numeric keys down here at the bottom also have an alpha aspect to them. Notice how the alpha button is actually glowing right now to bring attention to itself. So if you need to, you can always press that, and that will put this into an alpha mode so that you can basically do, like let's say you wanted to do a C, you could press the 2 key 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and that would put a C up on screen. But I'm just going to leave this as is just for our purposes here. So I'm going to say OK. And we now are presented with a SKU quantity screen. So the whole idea here now, you'll see the cursor is in the SKU field. Let me see if I can get that recentered here. After you scan the SKU, it'll bring it down to the quantity field. This does have a built-in scanner to this. It's a really nice quality scanner in my personal humble opinion, much more so than the data collectors that we have utilized in the past. So let's just go ahead and take a look here. So my bottle of Roche Thomas Mighty Mist 8-ounce mouthpiece cleanser. There's our barcode. Just going to scan that. Bleep, it brings that right in, and it's going to ask us for the quantity. Now, I'm going to just make up some numbers here. I obviously know what quantities my database has here for my purposes here, but let's say that obviously the whole point of this is to get accurate counts. So I'm going to say that, yes, I went around and I counted 28 of these. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in 2, 8, and I'm going to hit this enter button right here, and you'll see that it drops that down to the bottom half so you can see what was the last SKU that you counted and what was the quantity that you counted. The cursor itself is now back up at the SKU field, and it's ready to scan the next item. So we'll scan our next item, some Roche Thomas Mighty Slick Valve Slide Oil, 16 fluid ounces. This is not, by the way, an advertisement for Roche Thomas products, despite what you may think. There, it scans our SKU, and it's going to ask us for our quantity once again. I'm going to say that there are 20 of these, and enter. A couple more products, a polish cloth, and let's say that there are 5 of those, and enter. And some bone bottles. If there are any former trombonists out there in the audience, you'll love these empty bottles for use with our slide cream. And I'm going to say that there are 8 of those. So, okay, we have now gone around, we've scanned some product. Again, very important that while you are counting your products, the actual live quantities are remaining completely static. We want to make sure that the counts that we get of these products are the same as when we first prepared for inventory. If you're counting your products and sales are going on, you're receiving quantities in, and the computer says that according to your snapshot you should have 20 of these, and now suddenly you're counting 40 of them, it's going to assume that you're actually off by a discrepancy of 20, even though really what should have happened is you should have counted the 20, finalized that count, and then received the extra 20 in. So bear that in mind. We're going to take a look at that at the end of the session, how that actually all works here. So when it's time to import this in, basically all we need to do, and we're just going to go back to the home screen. So there's really nothing that needs to be done on the device itself. Now let's take a look at that DC sync utility. Now we have the DC sync program. Of course, now at this point you've gone back to your computer and you've plugged your unit back into your computer. So again, on the Windows Mobile and on the DC Sync program, it should say connected in both of those. If not, try unplugging it and replugging it back in. Sometimes you just might need to do that a couple of times. Sometimes you also might need to log out and log back in. It's just something, a little quirk that I've seen with Windows Mobile, that Windows Mobile device platform, just being 100% transparent on that. I one time did plug this in and I unplugged it and then I plugged it back in and it did not connect. I did have to actually log out of my Windows session and log back in, and then it seemed to work just fine. So your mileage may vary. Um, I do see a question, is this unit wireless or does it need to remain plugged into the computer while you scan items? Obviously, like I said, you can actually unplug this and it is completely mobile. It's not actually connected using any kind of Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or anything like that. It's 100% a self-contained device, and you can go around. You don't need to be connected to any kind of, again, Wi-Fi or anything like that. You're just scanning products, keying them into that internal database file, and then when you get back to your computer, you're going to plug this in, you're going to make sure everything's connected, and in the DC Sync program, you're going to click this refresh button. And remember how when we started that physical inventory file, it came up and it named itself physical inventory _1. So what should happen here is when we click this refresh button, it should actually see that physical inventory file here. There it is, physical inventory _1. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this arrow key to bring this over. Down at the bottom, there's a default save path. Now I've got a path to my local AMSI physical inventory. We're just going to basically put that in there. I have that obviously already set up for our purposes here. You can put in whatever save path you would like in there. I recommend, just for ease of use, to put that into your AMSI folder, wherever that may reside. If you're currently on the server, go ahead and put that right into the local path. If you're on a networked workstation, go ahead and put that into the network path, again, back to your AMSI location. And when it's all said and done, you've got this all ready to go, you'll click the Fetch button. And what that will now do is that will download that file off of this unit and put it into that file folder. And I already had done this for a test in the past, so it's coming up and saying that it already exists in this location. I'm going to go ahead and replace it. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that. And as we can see here now in the status, it says file saved. By the way, I do see a question. How does the scanner behave when you scan something that isn't in the count file? The unit itself doesn't actually have that snapshot file in the system itself, in the unit, so it's not going to make any kind of indication that the barcode that you've just scanned isn't something that you actually prepared for. What will happen, and we'll take a look at that in just a little bit here, we'll see something here. We'll actually take a look at a potential scenario of if you scan something that isn't in your inventory or that isn't in your account file. So with that in mind now, let's go ahead. We've saved the file. Let's go ahead and now switch back over to our AMSI unit, our AMSI system. Okay, and now really at this point, if you can confirm that you have counted everything that you need to count, technically at this point you can reopen for business. But what you want to make sure that you do here is go into Modules and Inventory, go down to your Physical Inventory menu, and we're going to go to the Import Physical Count program. When you run this program, it's going to confirm the location that you want to bring this in for. Even if you have multiple locations, or especially if you have multiple locations, you want to make sure that you're pulling this in for the location that you technically took this count for. Now again, I'm just doing it for the Dubuque location. That's my default location for this workstation, so that's what it defaulted to. For the ASCII file to import, ASCII is just a fancy word for text. We're going to click the Find button. It's going to default into my AMSI inventory file folder here, so that's good. I'm just going to scroll down until I see my physical inventory file. There it is, 11:24 at 11:34 a.m. Click on that so that it's highlighted and click OK. They'll put that path in there. Import method, SKU quantity. Leave that as is. and we're going to talk about this in just a little bit. We do have an old option here for SKU only for some old units that had an option to switch back and forth between SKU quantity or SKU only for serialized. There's just the SKU quantity option in here, but I'll show you a neat little trick for doing serialized inventory specifically, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But basically, if you're using this unit, leave it on SKU quantity and click proceed. And the file has been imported. You'll see it actually shows up here that it imported 4 records. Obviously, if you're doing a larger count, that might take a few seconds longer, but it's pretty quick. Files have been imported. Perfect. We click OK, and we exit out. So what has just happened? Well, what we've done is that we haven't affected, I'm going to refer over to this side as my live quantity file, and over on this side of my head as the snapshot file. Hopefully I'll remember that by the end of this session. So what we've done is in that snapshot file, we have now actually updated the counted quantities for these units that we just scanned. And it's going to now register that those have been in fact included in an account. It hasn't done anything yet to the live quantity file. Let's take a look at a couple of reports just so that we can kind of see what's going on here. So again, jumping back into the report catalog, going to the inventory tab, going down to list physical inventory, and I'm going to run the list physical inventory for review report. Let's go ahead and click run on that. I'm just basically going to leave this as is. Now you do have the option of listing discrepancies only. I don't have a whole lot of data here. I'm just going to leave it go. Again, this is referring to the snapshot file, so even though there are all kinds of categories here, it's only going to look at the categories that I've prepared. And I'm going to click OK, throw this up to screen. And here we see those same 7 items, including a SKU that was not found. Now, someone did ask what happens if you scan something that isn't in the count file, and here is what happens. So you'll see that it actually lists that out there as the barcode that we scanned, SKU not found, location D. I didn't find it, so there's no category or subcategory to report. There's no computer quantity to report. The count is 20. There's no cost associated with it. For the RT55, that is the item that I scanned here. I told it that I had counted 28 of those. The computer quantity is registered as 29. For the polished cloths, it is showing that I counted 5 of those. The computer says I should actually have 10. So, and lastly, the bone bottles, I counted 8. The computer thinks that I should have 6. So technically, I've got discrepancies all across the board here. And of course, there's those other 4 items that I couldn't actually go back and get a hold of. Actually, this valve slide oil, it looks like I may have missed a 0 in there. That should actually be this unit here. So we'll actually take a look at what we can do for that here in just a moment. But basically, what's going to happen is if we just kind of let this go through to fruition, for the items that we do have, it's going to come in and it's going to say, okay, for the counted quantity of 28 versus the computer quantity of 29, there's a discrepancy of 1 there. And so ultimately it would actually wind up reducing our live file by 1. For the polished cloths, it would wind up reducing that by 5. For the bone bottles, it would actually increase that live quantity by 2 because we counted 8. The computer says we should only have 6. And as we can see there, the counted cost versus the computer cost. Now, again, this is demo data, so don't worry too much about the actual costs that I have in here. I don't have a whole lot of actual cost data just because I don't have that information on file here. But pay closer attention to the numbers. Obviously, what we are seeing here is essentially going to be the change in inventory and cost levels when this is all said and done. I do see a question coming up here that says sometimes books in particular in the music industry have 2 barcodes. If one is in Tritech and one is not, is it a safe bet to scan them both since the SKU not found doesn't change anything? You know, I would actually recommend against that, and I'll show you why, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. Thank you very much for the question, Leslie. We'll come back to that in just a moment. But basically, what that report does is it gives you a snapshot of the snapshot, so you can kind of see where those discrepancies might lie, where those changes might overall be. Now, that SKU not found is actually a great segue into taking a look at um, this whole process of identifying, oh, okay, because in reality, you're probably not scanning just 4 items. You're probably scanning 400 items. And it's going to be impossible for you to remember, okay, well, what does that barcode represent? So a handy little utility for you to be cognizant of is in the inventory maintenance menu, about halfway down, it'll be called physical inventory. In the physical inventory file, this is going to show you everything that's been scanned, and you can see the SKUs here listed out. Actually, there's a different utility that I'm going to show you here. Head cold's messing with my head a little bit. Now, actually, but this is something that can be kind of helpful here, just so you can kind of see how this process does work. Notice how when I click on any of these records on the left-hand side here, this is giving me a listing of the information that's associated with the SKUs that were included in the preparation process. Essentially, there's really 3 things that you want to be aware of that the snapshot file was tracking. The quantity counted, whether it was counted or not, and the computer quantity. Now, the computer quantity is really not going to be listed on here, but really the quantity counted and the fact whether it's counted or not is going to be of particular information for you. There's also a counted order here. We're not going to focus too much on that. We're going to take a look at a slightly different utility here. But if you ever also want to just kind of see, what's all currently in that snapshot file, this is a good place to go. The utility that I actually am thinking of is actually found back underneath your physical inventory menu, and it's called the Review Physical Import File. And the importance of this is we're going to look actually at that file. Remember how I first scanned this product, then I scanned this product, and then I had scanned this product, and then I'd scanned this product. So basically the concept is probably you're going from one end of the aisle to the other, you're going up and down the shelves, you're scanning all the products, you're counting them in a pretty specific order. When you bring this utility up, I'll again try and make this a little bit bigger here if I can. Doesn't look like it wants me to grab that corner. But hopefully this isn't too small. So we're going to go ahead, find that same file. So I'm going to go down to the physical inventory file, click OK, and load that in. Here are the 4 files that I counted, and this is where the order of operations really comes into play, because we can see, okay, yep, I scanned my RT55. Remember, I scanned the barcode, and AIM-SI, when that file was imported, it took that barcode and it matched it to the corresponding SKU record in AIM-SI. So it's coming up and saying, yep, that's the RT55 8-ounce Mighty Mist. You counted 28 of those. The next item that I counted was this particular barcode. It did not find that matching barcode in AIM-SI, and so that's why it's coming up in red. But the important element of that is to see what was before it and what was after it, because you might not actually know what that barcode represents. So now you can say, okay, this item that I did not know what it was, and of course I'm not actually going to be holding it in my hand when I'm reviewing that import file, but it should be between the Mighty Mist on my shelves and the polished cloths on my shelf. And so that's where I can go in and say, oh, okay, yep, that is this particular SKU, and I counted 20 of them, and now I can go back and actually review that using my my data process, my just analysis of inventory. In fact, what you might even do is, while you have this on screen, you can go in and you can say, oh, okay, that is the RT whatever, and you can actually go in and say, okay, I counted 20 of those. You can even, while you're up here, you can come up in the find SKU field, and if you have just a regular barcode scanner, you can scan that barcode and see where it might be. But of course, you might not actually know what that barcode is at that point. But you can use that to kind of jump through a lot of records here if you are wanting to look for a particular SKU. If you did want to go ahead and key that into your count, you can go back into that physical inventory and go into the enter physical count manually, put in that, I think that was RT28, yep, the valve slide oil. We had counted 20 of those. I'm basically just going to go ahead and proceed that and key that in. So now, when I rerun this physical inventory for review, it's going to show that I did in fact count those 20 valve/slide oils. And Leslie did bring up a good point. The SKU not founds don't actually change anything when it's all said and done. So it's safe to just basically leave that as is. If you've identified the item appropriately and you've gone and essentially keyed in that manual count for it, then you're golden in that process. So now you've had a chance to review the discrepancies. You've sent your lackeys, I mean employees, out to make sure that if there are any discrepancies, that there aren't mismatched products, that they haven't rolled underneath a shelf or gotten lost underneath another product or anything like that. By the way, if you do scan one and then scan some more items and then come back and scan more of them, it will consolidate all those into one count for that same product. So don't worry about that as well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up the physical inventory for non-serialized products. So just so you can kind of see, I'm going to hop into a quick SA maintenance, and I'm going to bring up that RT55, the 8 ounces of Mighty Mist. So there we can see the current count of 29. Now I'm going to go ahead and update non-serialized quantities. And it's letting me know that there are 3 items that were not counted and their quantity will be changed to 0. You can run the report to list items not counted to review if needed. We'll talk about that in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and proceed. That has gone through and it has basically adjusted those quantities. And now if I take a quick look at my SA maintenance again for my RT55, we'll see it now shows 28 of those. Where did that one go? If we take a quick look at the report catalog, this is for you bookkeepers in the audience. If we take a quick look at the GL listing here, list ledger by reference. I'm just going to do this for today through today. We'll see that it is basically making adjustments. The overall effect of that asset account, that 120, in this case 120-11, we reduced the inventory on hand by about $160, and it's dumping that into inventory shrinkage. If the amount actually increased your inventory on hand, it would have done the opposite of that. It would have debited 120.11 and it would have credited inventory shrinkage. Now, what about serialized inventory? For serialized inventory, first of all, from an actual adjustment perspective, if you are going around and scanning those different barcodes for your serialized items, if you scan serial numbers that don't exist in your inventory, you're going to be wanting to actually just receive those in using receive inventory. If you come up and it says some items were not counted and those happen to be serial numbers that didn't get scanned, the update non-serialized process does not zero those out. You're going to go into inventory transfer options and you're going to transfer those out. What reason do you want to use? You might use lost or stolen. You might use delete inventory. I would probably refer to the lost or stolen. That will effectively, from the default ledger perspective, I believe that still does affect inventory shrinkage. And then getting back to Leslie's question, if one barcode is in inventory and the other is not, now technically, again, that's not going to affect it. You can do like what I just did. A quick little pro tip for you, Leslie, you can, so that you don't run into that in the future, you can go into the alternate barcode area and you can associate additional barcodes for that same SKU. So just be aware of that. That way it doesn't matter which barcode you scan, it'll link that back to the same SKU or catalog number, just so you have that information available for you. But excellent question. Now, as I was saying, for serialized inventory, obviously there's just one of every barcode that you're scanning. So quick way to handle that here in the AML LDX10 data computer. Going into physical inventory, let's just say we were working with that same file. I'm just going to open that, and I'm going to, it's going to come up and say append or clear. I'm just going to say append. I'm not really going to do anything with it. As we can see, there's all the records there. Notice there is this little lock button next to the quantity field. If I'm going to be constantly scanning inventory that there's always a quantity of 1, I'm going to just tap into that quantity field so that the cursor is in the quantity field. I'm going to put a 1. So there's the quantity of 1, and I'm going to tap that lock button, and that will now lock that quantity to 1, so that every time I scan something, it just drops it right down. See down there, quantity of 1. I'll scan it again. Quantity of 1. Get it in focus. There we go. This can be not that this is always the case, but there are some employees that eyeball it and say, yep, that looks like 28 of them. If you really want to make sure that they count every single one, lock that quantity to 1 and do the same thing for your accessories. Make sure they physically handle every single unit, scan it, set it aside. When they're done, put them all back. And that way you can make sure, at least for as far as you can throw your employees, that they are physically handling every single one and counting every single one. So just something also there to bear in mind. Got a few minutes left here, so let's wrap up. Let's talk about what's actually happening in the background here of the physical inventory process. So as I've been discussing here, there's that snapshot file, and there is that that live inventory file. So when you take that snapshot, what is happening is physical inventory is putting into that snapshot file all those SKUs that were included in the filtering selections that you did, the manufacturer, the store location, the categories, subcategories, the locators, all those different elements, and it's keeping track of whether or not it was counted, true or false, the computer quantity that it registers that you have on hand, and the counted quantity. If that SKU gets counted during this process, it's going to flag that counted as being true, and that's important, as we can see here on the listing. That is very important. We'll get to that in just a second. And it's also going to put in that counted quantity. So it's going to have both the computer quantity and the counted quantity. When you run that update non-serialized quantity process, it's not just taking the counted quantity and just throwing that into your live file. It's actually just taking the discrepancy, as we can see here on my example on screen. Actually, that's one too far. Let me back up one screen here. So when you have this example here of a SKU, let's say it has a computer count of 4, you scan them all, you find out you actually have 6. So what will happen is when you run that update non-serialized quantities, it's going to take the difference in there, in this case 2, and it's going to increase that live quantity by 2 when you run update non-serialized quantities. For all those SKUs that you did not in fact count. Remember, I had 3 files in there, 3 SKUs that I did not in fact count. The concept is, well, we didn't find them to count, and so we probably don't have them on hand. And so the concept there is that whatever your current quantity is sitting at, whether that's positive or negative, it will adjust that quantity to be 0 so that your inventory levels are accurate. Why do we do it this way? Why don't we just overwrite that file? Because remember, the whole concept was we should not actually be adjusting that live quantity file. Remember, I said don't receive any inventory, don't sell any inventory, don't transfer any inventory. Well, physical inventories obviously take a while. I mean, this is great for speeding up the actual counting process, but you might still want to take some time reviewing that data, and you don't want to be shut down and not making any money while you're doing that review process. So by all means, after you've got all those counts in and you're sure that the counts are accurate, go ahead and reopen for business. That's going to adjust those live quantity files, those live quantities of those SKUs. As we can see here on screen, it's going to take that difference, that discrepancy, and adjust the live data file when it's all said and done. So as we can see in the previous screen here where we talked about we had a computer quantity of 4, we counted 6 for that difference of 2. As soon as we finished up that count and all the counts are good, we reopen, and now we sell 4 of them. So according to the computer, we shouldn't have any. We really have 2. Then we receive 20 more in. So the computer thinks we have 20. We really have 22. When you run that update non-serialized quantities process, it's going to make that appropriate adjustment. It's not just going to overwrite it, so we get the correct quantity of 22. Now, what would have happened if you had accidentally received in those 20, but the computer thought you only had 4? Now you've counted essentially 26 of them, and so the computer thinks you're now off by 22. And so when you run that update non-serialized quantities, it's going to say, okay, you're currently sitting at 20. Now we're sitting at 42 because it thinks you were off by 22 of them. So that is the reason why we do it the way we do it. That's the reason why we stress the importance of not adjusting those live quantities while you're counting, because we don't want that count to be thrown off from a realistic perspective. We want to make sure the count that we get is relative to the computer quantity that was included in the snapshot at the time of preparing for inventory. So hopefully that all makes sense. I wanted to make sure that we had some Q&A time here. I've been obviously answering a lot of questions throughout this process, so we are at the end of our hour here. We did actually, of course, start a few minutes late officially because I forgot to click a button, but if you do need to get going, by all means, feel free to bow out. I am recording the entirety of this, so I will get any other questions here included in the recording. But for those of you who did ask some questions, I'm just going to scroll back up here and make sure I didn't miss any. So let's see. Yes, there's going to be a recording. Is the unit wireless? Yes, it is. Let me actually just kind of clear these out so that I don't potentially miss anything here. Yes, we can do a partial inventory. How does the scanner behave when you scan something that isn't in the count file? As we saw, it basically will just throw that barcode right in there, and then you can review that as needed using the utilities that we saw. Is the unit wireless? Yes, it is. Books have 2 barcodes. We discussed that. Is it possible to take inventory using more than one scanner simultaneously? Can multiple data files be imported for the same physical inventory? Yes, they can. And you want to make sure that if you are using more than one unit, you want to make sure that the folks using these units don't have any overlap. There's no crossover between what employee A has counted with device A and what employee B has counted with device B. Or if it takes more than 2 goes to go in and count things, that they didn't accidentally count the same elements twice using either the same data collector or the other data collector, because then you will wind up throwing off your counted quantities. So just be wary of that. But yes, you can definitely use more than one unit simultaneously for updating your physical inventories. Excellent question. Thank you, Dennis. Are you able to use this new hand scanner in conjunction with a previous hand scanner, such as the Metrologic Optimus? Yes. In fact, from AMSI's perspective, really there's no difference between using this unit, using the old Optimus. If you're really old school and you have an old, what were those things called? I don't even remember the name of them, but they didn't even have a built-in scanner. You had to physically connect a serial scanner. But technically, those would still work because really they're all creating the same text file. That's the important thing to remember. They're just creating that text file that has the SKU, a comma, the quantity, and then it's just going to the next item. So yep, you can definitely use these in conjunction with any existing data collectors that you have. Thank you very much, Hank. That was an excellent question. We may have 12 serial numbers for one guitar SKU, 10 are easily scanned in the warehouse, and the remainder is out on the sales floor. Would lengthy serial numbers have to be keyed into the data collector, or would the data collector allow us to select a serial number manually from the screen? 10 are easily scanned in the warehouse, and the remainder are on the sales floor. I guess I'm not quite following that question, James. Let me come back to that one because I think there are a couple of other questions here. I want to make sure that I get those answered, and then maybe you can follow up with more of a specific description on that. Can you explain why when you count more quantity than in the snapshot, AMSI creates a dummy transfer out and a real transfer in? It can be confusing when employees see those lines in inventory history. So yes, it is creating those inventory history records when you're transferring that in and out, or technically updating those non-serialized quantities. I guess I'm not exactly sure what you mean by a dummy transfer out and a real transfer in. So I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. Again, maybe Matt, maybe if you could follow up with what you mean by a dummy versus a real, because technically it's a transfer record. So not exactly sure, unfortunately. Let's see. What if an item is sold while the snapshot is open? How will that affect the final count? Christy's asking that. As we saw and as I've described, basically it's going to throw off your count. So definitely make sure that that no items get sold while you're taking that snapshot. Now, if you are selling something that's not actually included in the snapshot, that doesn't really affect things. But if you sell something that you should have counted, it's going to effectively throw off your count by at least that one. So just be wary of that. But excellent question, Christy. Thank you. Can you do a quick overview of the physical inventory maintenance module? Well, I think I did during that process. I'm not exactly sure, Nick, when you asked that question, but we did kind of review that. So hopefully that quick overview that we did here is sufficient. Thank you much for the question. How does transferring out serialized items work with the data collector? So Leslie, as we saw, really the data collector is here to just essentially capture what serial numbers you have been able to find and match that up with the serial numbers that are included in the snapshot. Any discrepancies between the two, either ones that you scanned that it couldn't find, you want to receive those in. Any that you did not scan that it said you should have scanned, you'll just transfer those out. The actual update data process does not affect serialized inventory in any way, shape, or form. You'll be wanting to do that using those specific processes, because otherwise AMSI doesn't know enough about the scanned serial number to really know what that item is or where it should go or anything like that. Likewise, AMSI, from the physical inventory perspective, doesn't really know what you really want to do with that item. Did you find it at a different store location, in which case you might want to actually do a transfer from one store to the other, or whatever the case may be. But you will effectively, if it's assuming no other variables in there, you'll more than likely be transferring it out as lost or stolen. Any issue running AMSI version 10? Nope, I'm on version 11 here, but really this whole physical inventory process hasn't changed since, I'm thinking, at least all the way back to version 4. So I mean, if you if you're running on a really old version of AMSI, first of all, you're running non-compliant software, shame on you. But second of all, really the physical inventory process hasn't changed. You could technically use this with probably DOS. Again, don't recommend it. Please upgrade. But yep, no issues with that. Can you do a quick overview of the advantages to using the spot check compared to physical inventory? I would love to, but unfortunately I'm out of time. I do actually have some other pre-recorded webinars that really get into more of the elements of spot check versus regular inventory. Nick, if you want to give me a call after the fact, we can see about discussing getting you access to those pre-recorded webinars, but thank you much. Do you have to be on version 11 to use the LDX 10? No, you do not. You can use this with any AMSI version. Guitars are hanging on a wall with no UPC. Can the scanner be used in conjunction? Oh, wait, that's just one question. Guitars are hanging on a wall with no UPC. Technically, okay, I think I understand your question now, James. So when you do get to that SKU field, if they don't have a barcode to scan, you could technically use the physical keypad here to key in the serial number that you see in the body of the guitar or wherever you might have it on there, or even if it's just on like a hang tag with no barcode. But hopefully that answers your question. You can definitely just key that in manually. Dennis asks, can the scanner be used in conjunction with entering quantities via the keyboard? Actually, you probably saw me do that using this during this live webinar, so hopefully that answers your question there, Dennis. I understand you can't start selling while counting. At what point in this process can we go back to selling? As we saw, we recommend doing that after you've really finalized and made sure that your counts are accurate. You don't necessarily have to have run the update non-serialized quantity. You technically wouldn't haven't have had to even run the DC sync and import the physical count. Just make sure that your counts are essentially finished and that you haven't missed anything, and then you can reopen for business. Excellent question. Thank you, Mike. Let's see. Can you explain why? Oh, we're back to that question between dummy versus real. Is it a good idea to do the inventory before updating to the next version of AMSI? To my knowledge, there's no qualms with updating from version 10 to version 11 while the physical inventory is in progress, but you may want to verify that with technical support. I believe in some cases, in versions past, like 9 to 10 or maybe even 8 to 9, there was an issue with that, but you may just want to double check. I don't think there is. If there is, in fact, we probably have it listed on the version 11 upgrade process, the document that we have on our website of things to consider. But yep, that I don't think there should be an issue with that, but you may want to double check with technical support just to be on the safe side. And I believe that is all the questions. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. If I missed your question or whatever the case may be, definitely give me a call. You can just call our normal sales line and ask for me, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that I couldn't cover here during the session. But thank you, everyone. I'll let you get back to your day, and if I don't chat with you before then, I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving.